Welcome to the Kingdom Man podcast, where we discuss some of the hard topics facing men with a Christian perspective. I'm your host, James Russell. Happy to be back with you. So recently I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. And like all conversation these days, it happened over text. So I'm thankful that it did because, I said some things that I wish I could have remembered. But had it not been in text, I wouldn't have been able to remember as well as I do. But the conversation kind of was on the topic of, doing something hard. Now, if you've been around this podcast very long, then you know that we discuss this at length. It all stems back to episode number 2, Do Hard Things. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend it, as it gets woven into this podcast over the past year that we've been doing it quite frequently. So in that stream, in that thought line of doing hard things, I saw this advertisement for, it's basically like one of your Navy SEAL type trainings. Obviously, it's not going through buds. It's people who have been through those kind of trainings who kind of put you at your limit to stretch yourself. You have the opportunity to quit, or you have the opportunity to suck it up and keep moving. So with this training, I found it fascinating. I sent it to my friend. I'm like, dude, I'll totally do it if you do it. So the conversation kind of went back and forth. And my friend said, well, he's heard about the program and that it's tough. So here's the line that I gave him. I thought it was good, even though I just kind of spit this line out. I don't really know where it came from. But man, it sounded perfect. So I want to actually explore the idea a little bit more to make sure it's not just something that I've heard and regurgitate, or if it's something that I actually believe. So here's the line. So when he said, I hear it's tough, the line that I gave says, strength is only gained through adversity. And I'm like, man, that sounds so cool. But do I actually believe that? And I think I do. What do you think? I feel like strength is only gained through adversity. Whatever kind of strength that you have is because you've pushed up against something that was difficult. If you have moral strength, it's because you've been exposed to things that required you to exhibit your morals and put them into action. If you have physical strength, it's because you actually push up against weights or whatever instruments that put strain and stress on your body, that you then overcome that strain and that stress. And through the overcoming of that strain and stress, your body actually gets stronger. So that when you encounter those strains and those stress again, they have less of an effect. So my question for you today is, what are you trying to strengthen? I can show you what you're trying to strengthen by showing you what stresses you actually bring and welcome in. Because strength is only gained through adversity. Now, I know guys who go to the gym every day, and they have what they're looking for is a good muscular tone. They like to feel the pump. They like to feel buff. And if that is all that they want out of it, then they're happy. They've got what they want. But ultimately, what strength is for times of adversity. You get it through adversity, and you get it for adversity. Because like I said, it's based on the stresses that you come across that you gain the strength, so that the next time you come across it, it doesn't have as powerful an effect. So one of the greatest ways to grow stronger is not to avoid what you're weak in. Is to expose yourself to it repeatedly so that it becomes less and you become more. If you want to be stronger physically, if you want to be, jacked, then it's not going to be because you went to the gym the first 2 months of the year, because everyone does that. By the middle of February, most gym memberships, people don't even check in anymore. We get all hyped at the beginning of the year, but then we lose sight of the goal. What's the purpose? Because sometimes it can become monotonous. Why am I doing the same thing over and over? I mean, initially you might get some good results, but those results tend to fade. So why do you keep doing it? Ultimately, it's because there might be a time that you need that. There might be a time that you come across adversity that you have been preparing for the whole time, whether it be physically, spiritually, emotionally. So this can relate to trauma as well. And trauma is something that most everyone can relate to. Now, not everyone has the same type of trauma, but it seems like everyone has just at least a taste of what trauma is. And I may have this viewpoint because my wife is in the mental health field. I don't know. It seems to me to be the case that everyone has at least a small taste of it. But how you react to it, how you interact with it, will make all the difference. Because I've known people who have been in a car accident who were afraid to drive a car after that. So that what traumatized them caused them to be weakened. And yes, trauma is adversity. But what you do with that trauma makes all the difference in the world. It is adversity. Just go ahead and forget about PTSD. I mean, yes, these are real things, but think about it just through the lens of adversity. It can make you stronger, but it was a very taxing and heavy, weighty event. Absolutely acknowledge that it was a big stressor in your life. It may have changed your life forever, but it doesn't mean it has to weaken your life forever. One of the great ways to treat trauma is by repeated exposure to the event. By talking about what happened to you over and over. Now that may not be across the board, that may not serve everyone the same way, but that is one of the great ways to handle trauma, to handle that stress, that adversity, is by acknowledging that yes, it was real, but I am here on the other side of it. Yes, it was a hard time, but I can grow through that and become a better person today because of it. But if you haven't been through trauma and your life has been pretty good so far, then I highly recommend that you find some adversity. In that same conversation I had with my friend, I threw out another line, and I thought it was good, so I'm going to share it with you again. I told him it was a whole lot better to choose the adversity rather than let the adversity choose you. Because we cannot control everything that happens to us or around us. But what we can control is what we allow ourselves to be exposed to. So if you want to be stronger physically, then you can go to the gym rather than find yourself in a moment where you need physical strength but don't have it. So the best way to grow your faith or strengthen your faith is not to not use it. Is to use the faith that you have. Is to push as much as you can in that arena, whatever arena it may be, if it's faith or health or whatever, to push yourself in that arena so that the adversity can cause that aspect of you to grow. You can choose to do it before the adversity chooses you. Because when you have a health crisis, if you go through a massive heart attack, having worked out before that heart attack may have lessened your chance of having a heart attack. But that doesn't count for anything if you haven't worked out and you find yourself in that heart attack. And now you need the strength in the heart. And this applies to your morality, your ethics, your spirituality. I've had the opportunity to speak to teenagers at a variety of different churches. And in relation to this line just popped into my head, so I wanted to share it with you. Basically, if you are choosing to save yourself from marriage, that's a great choice that I highly recommend. I feel like that is the biblical way to live your life. Now, that doesn't mean that if you've screwed up that it's all over for you. God can still use that. But speaking to teenagers who haven't yet made that choice, what I wanted to impart to them, which is still good for us here, is that the time to choose whether or not you're going to save yourself from marriage is not when you're making out with the boyfriend in the back of the car. You are compromised in that moment. You don't really have the will to make that choice the way that you should have. That decision needs to be made before you ever find yourself in that situation. This goes for anything else in our lives. You shouldn't be making decisions in the heat of the moment. You should know who you are, what you believe, what you will do, what you will not do before you find yourself in adversity. Get yourself squared away. And once you have yourself where you ought to be, then all these other things won't really shake you or move you as much. We see people who vacillate so much, they go back and forth, and you can't trust that person for anything because you don't know who they are, because they don't know who they are. And we as kingdom men need to be men that can be counted upon to be who we are wherever we find ourselves to be. So we make our decisions ahead of time. We figure out who we're going to be, and then we be that man. And part of that is by choosing the adversity. Make the decision not to be weak, but know who you are and then make yourself stronger on those principles. If you want to be a man of faith, exercise your faith. We need you to put the work in to be a better, stronger man of God. And the only way to accomplish that is through adversity. Guys, thanks again for listening to the Kingdom Man podcast as we celebrate this 1 year of putting out episodes and in our attempt to make men better men and kingdom men. We just want to remind you that one of the best ways for you to help the Kingdom Man podcast grow is by sharing. We don't have sponsors. We don't have Patreons. We don't have ways for you to invest financially into this group, because one of the things that we really want to do is not make money. We want to see men become better men. And the best way that you can help us reach that goal is by sharing it with your friends and family. And that's it. It's simple as that. And the more that you can do that, ultimately, the more men we can affect for the kingdom of God. And it just starts with one person like you sharing the word. So thank you guys so much. And we look forward to seeing you next week.